Good evening. I think all of you are present, or most of you are present. Now let's start Pablo Neruda. And in our last class, we discussed in details the background study of Latin American poetry and the place and position and contribution, the role played by Pablo Neruda as a Latin American poet. Now today we will directly go to the discussion of the poem Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines. Now, as I have said in my last class, that Neruda was a poet who dealt equally with love and personal emotions as well as the common cause. He was a poet who was inclined to communist beliefs, and in his later works he was more interested on hailing the cause. And what we see as a very important trend in Neruda's poetry is that from the very beginning of his poetical career, we see that he was quite an effective artist and an expert artist who was able to merge both the personal emotions and the common cause, and could channelize his personal emotions through the critical lens of his poetical expertise, with which he can deal with the question of the common people. So that is something different. But here today, what we will do today in this particular poem, Tonight I Can Write the Saddest Lines, is out and out a subjective expression of a poet, and who is a lover poet, and who is dealing with what is happening within him as a lover after the breakup, and how he wants to express and at the same time transcend his feeling which is born out of his unrequited love. Now, certain imageries and metaphors that you will find in this poem, it has certain connections for which I would like to read out a poem, the famous Bengali poet Jibanananda Das, and at the same time will also... Okay, this was the problem in the internet connection. I've come back. And I would like to read out a poem from Jibanananda Das. The name of the poem is Akash Lina, and I would like to show you that how there are certain points of merger and certain points of intersections in both the lines of Jibanananda Das and that of Neruda. And after reading the poem in Bengali, I will also read out the English translation of the poem, and after that I will go to the main text of Neruda, and then we'll discuss in details the various aspects of the poem. Now let us read Akash Lina by Jibanananda Das. সুরঞ্জনা ওইখানে যেও নাকো তুমি, বলো নাকো কথা ওই যুবকের সাথে। ফিরে এসো সুরঞ্জনা, নক্ষত্রের রূপলি আলো, নক্ষত্রের রূপালি আগুন ভরা রাতে। ফিরে এসো এই মাঠে ঢেউয়ে, ফিরে এসো হৃদয়ে আমার। দূর থেকে দূরে, আরো দূরে, যুবকের সাথে তুমি যেও নাকো আর। কি কথা তাহার সাথে, তার সাথে, আকাশের আড়ালে আকাশে, মৃত্তিকার মতো তুমি আজ, তার প্রেম ঘাস হয়ে আসে। সুরঞ্জনা তোমার হৃদয়ে আজ ঘাস, বাতাসের ওপারে বাতাস, আকাশের ওপারে আকাশ. Now I will read out the English translation of this poem. Suranjana, never go there. Talk not with that before. Come back on this night of silvery star fire. Come back to this field, to this wave. Come back to my heart. Don't go any more with that buffoon. Farther and yet more far. To him, what the hell you talk? Sky beyond the sky, you seem to be clay. His love comes to you like grass, Shuranjana, your heart is grass today, wind beyond the wind, sky beyond the sky. So I'll repeat the Bengali lines. কি কথা তাহার সাথে তার সাথে, আকাশের আড়ালে আকাশ, মৃত্তিকার মতো তুমি আজ, তার প্রেম ঘাস হয়ে আসে। সুরঞ্জনা, তোমার হৃদয়ে আজ ঘাস, বাতাসের ওপারে বাতাস, আকাশের ওপারে আকাশ। To him, what the hell you talk? Sky beyond the sky, you seem to be clay. His love comes to you like grass. Shuranjana, your heart is grass today, wind beyond the wind, sky beyond the sky. So here we see that the poet is expressing his tension and the crisis, what he feels or he faces because of the relationship, the newly formed relationship of the girl named Shuranjana with another boy. And the failure of the poet is something which becomes instrumental in creating this poem, in creating this poetical work. So the poetical inspiration here is not the love of the poet for that girl Shuranjana, but here the poetical inspiration comes out of his unrequited love because of his failure that he has faced in his love. So the same thing here, Neruda is much more expressive and self-indulgent when he starts his poem with the very line, tonight I can write the saddest lines. So he says, tonight I can write the saddest lines. So why he is very much expressive from the very beginning? Because he wants to show the exuberance that is there within him, which comes out of his feeling of failure. And later in the poem we will find that how the poet is able to transcend the pain that comes out of his failure, and he is more successful in ennobling his heart to feel the very feeling that I love not the girl, that is not important, but I love to love. So loving love, or loving the very idea of love, is something that becomes the very inspiration of the poet to write this poem. So what the poet says here, tonight I can write the saddest lines. Write, for example, the night is shuttered and the blue stars shiver in the distance. So he says that what will he write? So I'm going to write the saddest lines, but what will be the very content, the very subject of my writing? And then he says that I will write about the night which is shuttered. So here we will see that night comes up as a very important imagery in the poem, that both the poets like Jibanananda Das has also said about the coming on of evening in the poem Bonalata Sen, that here night is not something which is associated to idea, that night is something which is associated to death. Day is life and night is death. It is not something like that, but here he gives a new meaning, a new nuance to the very time life, to the very phase of time that is night. And here he wants to emphasize the solitariness of the mind, which is very much embodied by the very time night. And in Jibanananda Das's Bonalata Sen we find that সমস্ত দিনের শেষে শিশিরের শব্দের মতো সন্ধ্যা নামে. So at the day's end, the evening comes and the evening moves towards night, like the sound of the dewdrops falling. So the dewdrops is very silent, and this silence, the solitariness and the sound of the dewdrops, all this go very side by side to emphasize, to create the very sense of solitariness. So he says that the night is shattered. Shattered means, so here just remove the word night. Remove the word night and use the word the mind. The mind is shattered and the blue stars shiver in the distance. So just remove the word night and use the word mind. The mind is shattered. And the stars which are very far from you, they are having a dim light and they are shivering. The poet feels that the stars are shivering. They are shivering. Scientifically, they looks that they always twinkle. Now, why the poet is not using the word twinkling stars? Because the word twinkle has a sense of joy, has a sense of liveliness in it. But when I'm using the word shiver, it feels that the heart of the poet, the mind of the poet is shivering, shivering in fear. Fear of what? Fear of loss, fear of losing the most loved thing, the most beloved thing. So he says, the blue stars shiver in the distance. The night wind revolves in the sky and sings. The wind is singing, and this singing and the song of the winds, it actually emphasizes the solitariness of the poet. Now here I would like to bring the reference of what Coleridge has used as the very concept of the Aeolian lute, that the poet's mind is very much like the instrument of Aeolian lute. Now what happens to Aeolian lute? Aeolian lute is not, which can be played by a musician. You have to place the Aeolian lute outside, side of the window, and the wind will flow and a music will created. The music will come out from the winds blowing. So the poet said that the Coleridge here wanted to point out that the poet's mind is like the Aeolian lute. So it gets the stimulus, the stimuli from the external world, and the music is created in the mind of the poet. So he says that the night wind revolves in the sky and sings. So every time, if you are able to remove the word night and use the word mind, you will get the very idea that what is going on in the mind of the poet. The mind revolves and sings. So the poet's mind becomes the very emblem, or the night becomes the very emblem of the poet's mental condition or the poet's mental state. The night wind revolves in the sky and sings. Tonight, and then he again repeats the line. Actually, he repeats the line only to emphasize his very feeling. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. And then he goes on to say why I'm trying to write the saddest lines. What is the cause of my sadness, my unhappy state? I loved her. So he is now coming to the point. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. Now, sometimes she loved me too, that means the event is something of the past. Now, there is no love between the poet and that girl. But not like Jibanananda Das. Jibanananda Das, in his poem Akash Dina, he actually is doing what? He is telling the girl not to go with that boy, not to go with that buffoon. But here Neruda lets the girl go. And here he is able to transcend his feeling of loneliness, solitariness, his feeling of his sense of loss by telling that you have gone, but your memory, the very nostalgia of my love, that remains, and that becomes the very power, or that is something which is instrumental in creating something out of my pain. So poetry is created something out of pain, out of the pleasure that is born out of pain. I loved her, and sometimes she loved me too. Through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. So he is remembering the things, how he made love with his beloved, how he used to hold her in her arms. through nights like this one, some such night, like today's night, I used to have my beloved, that girl beside me. I used to held her in my arms. I kissed her. He's using the word in past tense. I kissed her again and again under the endless sky. So every time we see that the poet is trying to connect his own personal feelings with the cosmic things outside the world, and here we can see, and we can connect this with the very idea that Pavlov has given. Pavlov says that when you have any problem, you just go outside and look at the sky and the universe outside, and you will be able to realize that how tiny you are and how small is your pain compared to the big world outside. So every time Neruda is trying, he knows that his problems, that his pains, his feelings, emotions are very irrelevant compared to the things that are going on outside, but he wants to connect that with the world outside. And here, because he is dealing with the things more subjective, more personal, he is trying to do that with the cosmic event, with the cosmic things going on out in the outside world. Through nights like this one, I held her in my arms, kissed her again and again under the endless sky. She loved me. Sometimes I loved her too. He says that I also loved her and she loved me. But you will find there's a very critical thing, there's a very problematics in this relationship, that the problem lies with the fact that who ditched actually whom. Was the poet who left the girl, or it was the girl that who left the poet, because this things remains a bit confusing throughout the text. She loved me, sometimes I loved her too. How could one not have loved her great still eyes? He describes the beauty of his beloved. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. He repeats the line again. Tonight I can write the saddest lines. To think why I'm trying to write. So every time the poet is trying to justify why he is trying to write the saddest lines this night. To think why I'm trying to write the saddest line tonight. To think that I do not have her. So I'm trying to write this line to feel, to realize the fact that she is no longer mine. So the relationship no longer exists. To think that I do not have her. To feel that I have lost her. So he is repeating the thing. I do not have her logically means I have lost her. But when you are really feeling the pain, the emotional setback you are having, you don't think of logic. You always try to repeat the things. When you cry for some time, do you cry logically? Do you cry logically? Is there any logic in your crying? Do you want to reason out why you are crying? Have you ever thought of this fact that I am crying logically, or I am sad and I'm trying to logically construct the reasons of my sadness, my unhappiness? No, it is not possible. So when I am having a sort of emotional setback, when I'm sad, when I'm feeling the pain, real pain in the heart, I will be repeating the things without taking care of the logical connection, the logical constructions. I will try to get rid of this metaphysics of pain and this metaphysics of pathos. To think that I do not have her, to feel that I have lost her, to hear the immense night. Now here he is using the thing like the Kitsian synesthesia. He wants to hear the night. Can you hear the night? You can see the night. You can feel the darkness of the night, the somberness of the night, the solitariness of the night. You can see. Night is something which you can feel, which you can perceive through your vision. But he says that I want to hear the immense night. So I want to hear the song. So night comes to me as a painful song. Night comes to me as a song of sorrow. Night comes to me as with its own elegiac notes. To hear the immense night, still more immense without her. Nights are always immense. Nights are more philosophic, more deep, more intense. But now I feel the intensity of pain this night. Why? Because she is not here. And the verse falls to the soul like the dew to the pasture. So he says, the verse is coming to me, Shishirer Shabder Moto Shondhe Name. The dewdrops fall on the ground like the coming on of evening. Eliot has described in his prologue how the evening comes, like when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. The same thing he's doing, what Jivanananda has said, Shishirer Shabder Moto Shondhe Name. This evening, the coming on of evening, like the falling of the dewdrops. And he says, the verse falls to the soul. The verse are falling tip top, the dropping of verse upon the soul, like the falling of the dewdrops. And the verse falls to the soul like dew to the pasture. How the dewdrop is formed on the very edge of the leaf at the very end of night. No one hears the sound, but you can feel the very sound. You cannot hear the sound of the dewdrops, the dew dropping, but you can feel the sound. And what does it matter that my love could not keep her? That doesn't matter. The love exists. Now he's in the phase of transcendence. That doesn't matter whether my love exists or not, whether it is there or not, but it was there. My love was there. That was important. Whether it is continuing, the continuation of the relationship no longer remains important to the poet, because the poet has started transcending. The night is shattered and she is not with me. She is repeating every time, she is not with me, she is not with me. I can feel her great eyes. I miss her. But now at the same time, he is trying to transcend his pains, that he feels that the love that existed, that is important. The continuation is not important. This is all. In the distance, someone is singing. Now he feels that I can hear the song. In the distance, my soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. In the distance, what I can feel now, see how the poet has started distancing himself from the immediate pain that he was feeling at the very beginning of the poem, that I have lost her, that because of my unrequited love, I'm feeling a sort of sadness, I'm unhappy. Now he feels that he is able to distance himself from the immediate pain. He says that this is all. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. So this, not only the loss of my lover, the unrequited love, the dissatisfaction is not only for this. There is something more than that. And I can only satiate my dissatisfaction. I can only soothe my the pain that I'm feeling. That is the real predicament of a creative artist. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. My sight searches for her as though to go to her. The immediate mind, my mind tries to find her. My passion wants me to go to her immediately. My heart looks for her and she is not with me. Every time his passion is trying to take him to his lover, that is his passionate feeling, and then only he is trying to transcend his passion, he's trying to transcend his feeling and feel that this is passion. He is no longer mine. I can no longer have her as my beloved. So I need to do something different. I need to channelize my pain, my sorrows in a different way. The same night whitening the same trees. The night is whitening the same trees. How the night is whitening? Because there is the moonlight. It's the moonlit night. The same night whitening the same trees. The trees are there. The world remains the same. The world remains the same. But I have changed. My situation has changed. Now here I would like to give a reference to a very important and a very beautiful line by Arundhati Roy that she wrote in The God of Small Things. When Joe was dead, Esther writes that everything is same, only there is a Joe-shaped hole in the universe. The universe remains the same, only Joe is not there. So there is a Joe-shaped, J-O-E, Joe is the name of the character which died. So there is only a Joe-shaped hole in the universe, all other remains the same. So here he starts little bit philosophizing the thing, that everything remains the same. Nobody is at all part of, nothing is getting disturbed with my loss. Only I can feel what I have lost. The same night whitening the same trees, we of that time are no longer the same. We have changed. I no longer love her. Now he says that I no longer love her. It is now he has been able to take himself to a higher level and to feel and to see the thing objectively, that presently I no longer love her. My love is no more present, something present. I no longer love her, that's certain. But how I loved her, that is important. How I loved her, that becomes important. My voice tried to find the wind to touch her hearing. So my voice is trying to find what? The wind, which will enable me to hear her words, to hear her. So he's trying to look for the wind, the night. All these are getting merged, connected with the mind, with the present mental condition of the poet. And others. So there's a very small single word and a whole sentence. And others. She is no longer mine. How he is able to emphasize his loss. And others. She will be another's. He repeats, he enumerates, he expatiates his feeling, what he had said with a single word. Another's. Like my kisses before, he used to kiss her before, but not now. Her voice, her bright body, her infinite eyes, it describes. She was so beautiful, but now she is another's. I no longer love her. That's certain. That is clear. That is certain. I no longer love her. But maybe I love her. Now who is this her? This her is not that person, that girl. This her is love itself, the very idea of love. But maybe I love her. And then he says the very important line of the poem. Love is so short, forgetting so long. Love is temporal, ephemeral. Love can end, but forgetting becomes so long. The process of forgetting, the very nostalgia that actually resists the person to forget the whole thing, that becomes long. That is something which is extended, which is so long living. And that particular thing, that particular emotion which resists a particular person to forget, that actually becomes instrumental in channelizing the creative person's mind to create something. That actually does what? That actually arouses his imaginative faculty to channelize his or her feeling to create something anew. I no longer love her, that's certain, but maybe I love her. Love is so short, forgetting so long. Underline this line for explanation. Because through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. Every time he's remembering, he cannot but remember those things, the things that happened in the past. The same that was the same like this one. When I used to have her beside me, I used to kiss her, I used to see her and enjoy the beauty of my beloved. But now she's no longer mine. Because through nights like this one, I cannot forget. Why? Because he's trying to reason out. Because through nights like this one, I held her in my arms. He's trying to reason out, but reasoning is not possible. I held her in my arms. My soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. So in the previous line they said, my soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. What it has lost? It has that he feels the distance, but he says that my soul is not satisfied. And he again repeats the line here, my soul is not satisfied that it has lost her. My soul is feeling the pain of losing what it has lost. Though this be the last pain that she makes me suffer. Now he comes to a resolution that after I am able to write this poem, I think that I will be able to purge off my pain, my emotion completely, and I will be able to forget. But the tension remains that love is so short, forgetting so long. So he says that though this be the last pain that she makes me suffer, she makes me suffer. And I think that after writing this poem, I will be able to purge off completely my feelings, my emotions, and the consequent pains that I'm having because of losing her. I'll be able to purge them off clearly. And this, the last verses that I write for her. So this is the last verse I'm writing for her. He says that, but shesh hoye hoilo na shesh. The end does not make an end. The end opens up new possibilities. The tension remains that when he says, love is so short, forgetting so long, will he be completely able to forget his love? Though he says that this is the last verse I am writing, will he be completely able to forget his love? So this is somehow and a very brief and very bare discussion and analysis of the line. So I think that this was something, Neruda's expression of deep emotional exuberance and what he felt, and something very subjective, and it is very hard to logically analyze this particular poem, but somehow I've tried to give an analysis and a sort of understanding what you can get from the very idea of this poem. Now, there are several imageries that you will find. The imagery of the night is there, so the very customary things that we need to see. There is the imagery of the night in the poem, and throughout the poem there is the imagery of the night. And in the second line we see that the night is shattered and the blue stars shiver. So the imagery of the night, the poet is using that imagery from the very beginning of the poem and make us see the night as and he wants the readers to feel what he feels. Now that was something which Neruda has said in several other writings, and basically in his autobiographical writing, that is the memoir, that a poem is not the sole property of the poet, but it is something which belongs to the readers. The reader has their own right to appropriate the poem. So that is what Neruda felt while he wrote, and that is something which actually makes Neruda such a popular writer. And he was most often quoted and vastly translated in various languages. Even in Bengali, you will find the Bengali translations of Neruda's poems. So anyway, so there is the imagery of the night that you will find, and imageries continue in the following paragraphs with the endless skies. So the night, the sky, and how the dewdrops falling. These are very due to the pasture, the dewdrops falling on the pasture, and this is how the evening comes. This particular imageries has Neruda used, and I'll try to give a summary of this particular poem if I'm able. if I'm able to post it in the Facebook group, or I'll try to mail this particular material to one of your email IDs, and you share it with your friends. Now, this is a very small class, and the next class will be on the poem. I don't like the poem Ars Poetica, but I will teach that. I'll start with the way Spain was. I'll teach two poems in a single class because they are connected. The way Spain was and Discoverers of Chile, because these two poems together will give you an idea of what was exactly the relationship between the two countries, one the colony, another the colonized country, and the one the colonizer country, and how it was quite different from the relationship that we find in the South Asian colonies and other European colonies that we find in South Asia. So in the next class, I will let you know when I will take the next class. We will read two poems. The way Spain was, that is from the Third Residence, and another is the Discoverers of Chile from Canto General. And one more thing, this particular poem which I have taught today, which we have read with you, that is from the collection of poems. It's a very famous collection of poems of Neruda, the most famous collection. This is from the collection 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. I cannot pronounce the exact Spanish name of this collection. So its name is 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, and it was published in 1924. So this poem is very important. Get ready. Take care of your health. Stay at home. Don't go out. Follow the lockdown rules. Have a nice time. Thank you. And if you have any problem, just give me a call after this class.